All right, well, hello all. Thanks for joining us for the FY 2020 New Mexico Main Street Capital Outlay Public Infrastructure Funding Pre-Application webinar. I'm here today with Julie Blanke, just in case there's any technical questions around capital outlay. I'm also here with Jessica Mraz, our communications and media specialist that's helping organize this and on the production side. Um, my name is Daniel Gutierrez. I'm the director of New Mexico Main Street Program, and I wanted to take this opportunity to go through a couple of pieces of the application so that everybody is aware of some of the requirements, and I think make sure that everybody knows they can also, I think, look for technical assistance or at least talk with us if you have any questions following the webinar or ideas about specific projects. Okay, that was right. All right, so project proposal due dates are October 30th at 2 p.m. That is, because this is a competitive application process, the due date is firm, so please do make sure you submit it. It will be an electronic submission, so make sure you submit it to me by 2 p.m. and I will do my best to get out. I think just confirmations that it was received as soon as possible. So the legislative enabling appropriation language for this funding, it comes from Senate Bill 280. We did receive $4 million to plan design and construction infrastructure improvements in Main Street districts and local arts and cultural districts statewide. So it is very broad in terms of what we can do, but the focus here is on using this capital outlay to leverage economic development reinvestment, and the whole key here is we want to show products. So as you submit your awards, please make sure you read the directions carefully and submit all the information we're asking, especially when it comes to how your project will help or is directly connected to economic redevelopment. So the grant award, the funding is there already, so we're not waiting for bonds to be sold this year, and the funding will be available immediately after the grant agreements are completed, projects are awarded, and the state program issues a notice of obligation. And this is important, and I think this is something Julie will follow up with you as you get your award, because we can't pay for anything, any work started before a notice of obligation is issued. So just keep that in mind as you work with Julie on final grant agreements once awards are made. So eligible programs, you must be a accredited Main Street America program to apply. And this is important because we are looking, we want to make sure that our programs have the capacity to actually manage not only the grant, but the work that follows with it. So there is one application per community. So if you're a state authorized arts and cultural district or compound and you're in a joint program, because I know we have things, a number of different ways that we're organized, but if you're a joint program, you need to work with the Main Street program to decide on to do a joint application, and the same thing for separate organizations. And I believe we only have a couple of these that aren't attached to a Main Street program directly. You do need to partner with the local Main Street program and decide what project you guys want to apply on. And this, I know I'm speaking for what do we have? We don't have very many. I think there's 2 or 3. Carlsbad. I know Mora's ACB compound only, so they are able to apply on their own. General eligibility criteria. Again, you must be accredited program, but you also must have a full-time executive director and be up to date with all your compliance documents. We have a number of Sorry.
So display settings.
Oh, okay, hold on. Are they seeing that mine? Sorry,
Sure.
can folks see my my slideshow? Raise your hand if you can.
They're just seeing the presenter, so Eduardo says to put it in full screen mode, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that. Is it 3 dots, maybe?
No, that's
Do 3 dots. There you go.
does that work?
Perfect.
All right. All right, so hopefully you can see my screen now. Always something little. All right, so you must have a full-time executive director, and you must be up to date with all your compliance documents. As you know, we're in the process of going through our annual site visits, so you all should be taking care of that anyways. So that shouldn't be a problem by the time we come to submitting applications. So because this is a capital outlay, you have to submit the application in conjunction with your local government as a partner, as they will be the ones managing and those funds. There is an anti-donation clause, so we can't give directly to a local Main Street program. So you need to be working with them very closely to identifying what project you're going to be applying for, but that it's a joint project that both the local government and the Main Street program are behind. So we will be looking for a letter of agreement that has to be submitted with the application. And we also need to make sure that the local government has a current audit on file with the New Mexico Office of the State Auditor, because every project does have to go through a review by our chief financial officer to make sure that the local government is in compliance with New Mexico state laws and able to manage capital outlay funds. So that's usually something easy to find out just by checking with them and looking on the state auditor's website. One thing, previous Main Street capital outlay projects must be expended and invoiced by the date of application. And this is because we want to make sure you're not applying for new projects if you still have open projects. And the one caveat to this is if you're a current Great Blocks project or other larger public infrastructure projects that have received partial funding in the past, that it may be for a phased project. I know we gave small sums to some of the Great Blocks projects last year, so those communities are exempt because we know we're building funding to get the complete project done. But other ones are not exempt, and if I believe if you are working on a project with where you you ask for public infrastructure funding to complete construction documents, we want to make sure those projects are complete before you apply for a new one. So project proposals, all of them should be connected to your economic transformation strategies and be identified on your MRA or master plans. Again, we also want to make sure that you're working with your local governments to get them on the ICIP, so that when we go after funding, we know that or additional funding, it is a priority project. And when applicable, make sure they meet HPD requirements and are engaged with the New Mexico Department of Transportation. As we know, many of our projects are located on state and federal highways. So when you submit your project, you must submit a full project budget, even if it's funded, if it's going to be a phased project. We still want to make sure that we understand what the funding is for that particular phase and the overall budget for the entire project, and what other resources have already been secured, or what resources, funding resources you plan on applying for, or that have been identified as potential funding resources for the project. And again, this is a competitive application process, so please do make sure you answer all the questions and you really think through them before the application is submitted. Projects that are funded or awarded this fiscal year are expected to be completed by June of 2021. So there is a matching requirement. We lowered it a little bit this year. I think last year was 30%, and I think the whole idea is we want to make sure we open it up and make it more accessible for local communities. And we do realize that it is a struggle to get additional funding from your local community because there's so many other needs. So we did make the match minimum of 20%. So that's $2 for every $10 you're requesting. For general projects, that 60% of that match must be in the form of cash. And that could come from a number of different sources, with the exception of capital outlay, because you can't match capital outlay with capital outlay. So we do need other sources of funding for that, and that 60% of the 20% cash match. The remainder of the 40% of the 20% may be in the form of in-kind contributions, and that can be the cost of managing the project itself, whether it's through the local government or the Main Street organization. The one exception to this is communities that are applying for great blocks on Main Street projects for the new construction or the development of new construction documents for great blocks on Main Street projects. There is a full 20% cash match, and that's because we often need that to actually complete the construction documents. And I can talk more about that when we cover the great blocks on Main Street application. So we created 3 different funding categories this year. And again, the whole idea was to try to open it up to as many communities as possible. In the first funding category, we've set $500,000 aside for these type of projects. And this is for planning, design, and or construction of smaller public infrastructure projects. And, this, was mainly because I know not every community is going to be doing a big great blocks project or other complete street projects. Some of you are, you have a decent streetscape already, but you're really just looking for smaller projects to supplement that. So there's 2 options within this one. You could, if it's a smaller infrastructure project with a total of $80,000 for design and construction. So these ones you can actually use, apply for the development of construction documents and construction funding at the same time. But the cap on this is $80,000. And any costs over that $80,000 is the responsibility of the local government and the Main Street partner. So just think about that as you're putting those budgets together. Again, there still is a 20% match for that. So think about that as you're putting your project budgets together. The other option is for the development of construction documents only for some of these smaller public infrastructure projects. And you could apply for up to $40,000 just for the development of construction documents, because I know there are some projects that are going to cost more than $80,000, especially when it's combined. So I think those projects are some like we funded last year that we just did the design on some of these smaller ones, and we're trying to go in this year and next year and actually provide the money for the actual construction. So the idea is that, we want to move these as quickly as possible because we want to go after funding in the, subsequent years. So we need to keep showing product, and this is really building our pipeline for our requests over the next few years. So the one caveat is, again, if previously receiving funding for construction documents, we must be done with those. Must be done with the construction of those projects before we start applying for new projects, because again, we want to make sure we're staying focused and utilizing all the funding available. Funding category 2 is for the new great blocks on Main Street projects, and these projects are focused on designing 2 to 3 block core area within a commercial district, Main Street district. we are providing $100,000 in Main Street capital outlay funding for the local government to hire a team of engineers. Usually it's a landscape architect, but working with an engineer and other design professionals to actually create the construction ready drawings and documents so that it is a shovel ready project. There is a $20,000 cash match for this, because we've noticed that over the last few years that they've come in anywhere between 100 and 120,000. So we want to make sure that there is funding available for any contingencies that may occur, or depending on the scope of the particular project, we want to make sure we have at least 120,000 available for that. These projects have come in at on average, once they're designed, they're about $1.5 million projects. So keep that in mind as you, again, talking with your local government and thinking about how or what target areas you want to be looking at in your communities. So I imagine there's going to be fewer of the Great Blocks on Main Street project applications. So I am going to reserve going over the broader aspects of Great Blocks until after the main presentations through, because I know there's some folks that are just here for the category 1 and category 3. So I will talk more about this after for those that want to stay on and just focus on the Great Blocks only. So funding category 3, this is construction funding for some of our larger infrastructure projects, which are our Great Blocks projects, as well as other larger public infrastructure projects like the Complete Streets project in Farmington, and I know we have the project in Gallup as well that they worked in a similar way that we do the Great Blocks, but they went through a different process. So these are for those larger ones that are shovel ready to go. The maximum request is 800,000. We've actually set aside 3.3 million for this funding. For these projects, again, even though the max is 800,000, we want to make the distribution as equitable as possible. So it's really going to depend on where your project's at, what other funding you have identified, how it's phased in terms of how much we can put towards each one. And again, this is competitive. We want to, in the sense that we want to make sure we're working with your local government. There's a real partnership going on so that we're all on the same page in terms of how we want to target and I think the show product with this funding. Application, it will be, again, electronically submitted, but you'll be sending the construction ready documents and schematics signed by the appropriate licensed professionals via email. And we are looking again for phased budgets. So, if we're only focusing on phase 1 for this round, that's fine. We want to know what the total budget is and other anticipated funding that you have for it. So, I think as you guys start putting your budgets together, I know I'll be available, Lady Bell will be available to talk through some of these things in terms of what the best use of funding is. We are looking for, a scope in terms of what you would want to use our funding for, especially if you have other funding already targeted for these projects as well. And so I do, before I move onto this one, I do each category has different questions. So please read through those questions carefully and answer, according to what category you're applying to. And again, all of our folks are available for, just for some support. Qualifying public infrastructure projects include streets. We're not focusing on buildings as we have in the past, publicly owned buildings right now. And right now, I think for this round, we're still focused because we have a need and we have a pipeline already out there. We are focusing on, streets, pedestrian safety, street amenities, placemaking projects, and again, Great Blocks and other larger public infrastructure projects. I did want to throw out there that one thing that has changed in the past, we haven't funded wayfinding systems in and of themselves only as part of larger projects, but I do realize that we worked on a number of wayfinding systems that are ready to go, that that aren't going to be attached to larger projects. And if that's the case, you can apply for wayfinding system money, but I think that's under the category 1. So just be aware that we are considering those, but again, you want to make sure it's not something that if you're already in the process of doing streetscapes or other larger renovations, it's probably not the time to apply for it now. If you have other things that are coming that would disrupt that and need to replace it later, right? So just again, make sure that you're making a really good case in how it's connected to economic development. So we will have a review committee that will be looking through the projects, and once they're ranked and recommended and awarded, we will be looking for some final documents. And the whole idea is that we don't want you to have to go through getting a resolution of administrative and final, of financial support on the front end. We'd rather do that after we know that you're actually going to get awarded the project. So we will be looking for that. After they go out, we'll also be looking for a letter of support from the appropriate Council of Governments, because we want to make sure, and we talked about this, I think, at the last quarterly meeting during the business meeting, about how important it is to be working with our local COGs. They have access to a lot of funding that you wouldn't have directly just working with us as a state program or just with your local government. So we want to make sure that you're working with them, that they're aware of your project, and that you're connecting with them about any potential funding opportunities to really build off of the funding that we're putting into these. And the final thing would be a 3-year property renovation and restoration implementation plan that also includes some business development. And again, this is something I think we're trying to do with all our public infrastructure projects, to make sure that we're really capitalizing on that public investment and following through with the renovations and business development. So just keep that in mind, and that's something that you can certainly work with our revitalization specialists, especially our economic vitality folks, to really think about how you're going to capitalize on that investment. So again, the application due date is October 30th by 2 p.m. For some of the folks that are applying for the construction only, for the larger construction funding in category 3, I would encourage you, since I know you already have your construction documents and everything ready, to really get those in as soon as possible. As we're trying to, target specific projects in terms of ones that we know we can show a product with sooner than later, just as because we want to show something and some real movement, I think, before we hit the legislative session in February. February, and we do have a 10 million request for additional funding, so we really want to just get that moving. So if you're, I know some of the other ones will take a little longer, like the Great Blocks and some of the new projects that you're working on will, but again, get the construction ready projects in as soon as possible, so we can start looking at them and seeing how we can distribute them based on application and where the projects are and other committed funding to get them done. So I think with that, I will open it up to some questions if you have before going into the larger Great Blocks, for those of you that want to stick around and just focus on the Great Blocks on Main Street, new development of new construction projects. Let's see. All right. So I'm guessing we should probably raise our hand if you have any questions, or you can type them in.
Daniel, we have a question. Where do you find HPD requirements? Do we find that on the website?
Where do we find HPD requirements, do we find that on their website? So HPD requirements, one, you need to know if you're in a historic district or if you have a historic district, you're definitely going to want to connect with HPD. Carla McWilliams is our contact there, and you can definitely call her. You can look up on their website. They do have a list of historic districts and buildings on their website, and you can look through it, I believe, by city and county, just to see if you have something there. And again, you can connect with our revitalization specialists as well to see what kind of requirements. And I think, especially we need to, any funding that we do for a project, if it's in a historic district or not, I mean, if there's even contributing buildings, we do consult with HPD just to make sure that, because we do have a letter of memorandum of understanding that we will consult on all projects. So I will be sending them a copy of all the awarded projects so they can, give us a heads up if there's anything going on or connected to that. Let's see here. So please do reach out to HPD. Let me see. Can you send around an example of 3-year property renovation implementation business plans? Yes, I will. And I know we started a couple of them with Keith, and I'll send that out to the network just so folks can see what that means. And really, it's just really targeted focus on, what we're going to do to really capitalize on that investment. And I know we've done those with our Great Blocks projects already, so many of you already have that. But I think as we move forward, we are going to be hiring a new someone to replace my old position. We're reclassifying it to a project coordinator, project manager that will be working with, I think, all of you in the follow-up to, I think, the capital outlay funding. Let me see. Any other questions? I'm just trying to see if anybody has their hands up. Okay, let me see. Okay, I've seen Connie had her hand up. I'm trying to unmute you. If you want to unmute yourself, go ahead and ask your question.
Daniel, that was just earlier whenever you were asking if we could see your slides.
If you're talking, I can't hear you. So maybe it might be easy to just type your question in. Okay,
Daniel, we have a question.
If
when will
anybody else
funding
has
be
questions,
available?
please just type them in. I think it's easier for me to see. Okay, deadline to expand, I see that from Evan, is June 2021 is what we put. And the whole idea is just to really we actually have 3 years. We don't like to say that all the time. Julie gets mad at me when I say that, because we want to actually expend that money as soon as possible. So when we do a grant agreements for this funding, the June 2021 will be the deadline. But again, if there's certain circumstances that occur that are beyond our control or local government's control, we can look at extending that, but we do want to make sure we have a clear pathway to how that money is going to be spent, because I think by June 2022 that money will get diverted, and that's the last thing we want to do is revert money. So that's why we usually have that timeline on there. All right, Michael, to add to our huge infrastructure project, do we apply for A or C? And I think for yours, you would apply for C because you guys have construction ready documents are ready to go. So your category would be C. Even if it's is a smaller project, it would be C. All right. Any other questions? And again, you know, if there's things that weren't answered, I'm available. I'm actually on the road pretty much all 3 to 4 days a week over the next probably month. So you can get a hold of me by my cell phone is probably the easiest way, especially if you're looking for a fast answer. I am periodically checking email, but it's a little tougher because I am getting backed up on email to get back right away. And as far as final announcements will be made probably early or mid November. So I think we definitely want to do a quick turnaround. Applications are due October 30th, and we're gonna try to schedule some time to meet with the review team that first week at least a week and a half, first week of November, so that we can actually do a quick turnaround and get those announcements out ASAP. So if folks that are going to be applying for great blocks, new great blocks on Main Street construction ready documents, could you just type your name in so I could see how many we have, and then I could start that presentation next. And for the rest of you, I appreciate you taking the time to attend. I know, again, I will be available. Our revitalization specialists are available, and please do connect with them. I mean, especially some of these larger infrastructure projects, you know, I think those guys can help you guys kind of go through and determine what, you know, not only how you build off of how you build off of the investment, but you know, picking a really the spot that you want to actually the spot you actually want to apply for, or where the specific target areas are that can be most beneficial. So again, thanks all, and I'll talk with everyone later. We'll see you in next month, October 16th, I believe, is the quarterly, and Tucumcari, looking forward to that. And I'll also, again, I'm seeing a lot of you actually this week. I'll be in Southwest New Mexico, I believe. So I'll be seeing a lot of you later or in the near future. And again, I can certainly answer questions while I'm in the field as well. So thanks to you all that aren't staying for the Great Blocks on Main Street presentation. And I will commence with that one here shortly.